I never imagined my life would unfold like this. In all my years of picturing the future, I never saw myself standing in a tiny, poorly lit apartment, gazing into a chipped mirror, with the faint buzz of the city drifting in from outside. This wasn't the path I'd dreamed of. I was meant to have a companion, a cozy home, a foundation of security. I pictured mornings waking up in a house warmed by love, with someone to share life's burdens. But life doesn't always stick to the plans we make. Sometimes it veers off course, leaving us disoriented, searching for balance. My name is Clara Bennett, and I'm 46. For 23 years, I've raised my son Daniel alone. No partner, no safety net. Just me. I won't pretend it's been easy. There have been nights when I've sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how much more I can endure. Daniel's 24 now, and saying that feels strange. I still see him as a little boy, his tiny hands gripping mine, his giggles echoing through the house, his endless questions about the world. Now he's taller than me, with his own ambitions, his own challenges, a life that no longer centers on me. I'm proud of who he's become, but a piece of me feels abandoned. I tell myself this is how it's meant to be, that motherhood means giving everything until they no longer need you. It's supposed to be proof of a job well done, so why does it feel like I'm the one who's adrift? We live in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in the city's heart. It's tight, with barely room for a bed, a small kitchen and a bathroom too small for comfort. Privacy is a luxury we can't afford. I hear everything. His late-night calls, the clink of plates when he rummages in the fridge, the rhythm of his breathing as he sleeps. And I know he hears me too. In a space this small, there's no hiding. At first we managed. Rent is steep, and I work long hours to keep us going. Some days I'm so drained I can barely speak, let alone handle anything beyond survival. Daniel's searching for his path too. He works part-time, takes online courses when he can, but I see the restlessness in his eyes. He craves independence, a life untethered from mine. I want that for him, but wanting doesn't always mean knowing how to make it happen. Mornings were a constant struggle. I'd rise early, rushing to shower before work. Daniel would bang on the door, irritated because he needed the bathroom too. We'd bicker, our voices sharp with stress. Some days I'd relent, letting him go first even if it made me late. Other days he'd storm off, grumbling about how unfair it was. We were caught in a loop. Two people squeezed into a space too small, both craving time, both yearning for more than this life offered. Then, one morning, after another heated spat, we tried something new. We sat down, we talked. We needed a way to end these clashes before they eroded what little harmony we had. Daniel suggested it. Why don't we just shower together? I laughed, assuming he was kidding, but he was earnest. And when I thought about it, it seemed logical. What was the alternative? Wasting time arguing over bathroom priority? Starting each day frustrated? It wasn't strange, I reasoned. It wasn't wrong. It was just practical. A mother and son sharing a space, nothing more. So we tried it. The first time was clumsy, but we chuckled through it, joking about the absurdity. The bathroom was tiny, so we moved carefully, taking turns under the spray, keeping it brief. It was just a routine, a small fix to ease our lives. Or so I told myself. But something changed over time. At first, I dismissed it as fatigue or stress. Maybe it was how we started talking more in the shower than anywhere else. It was easier there. No distractions, just the sound of water and the steam clouding the air. Or maybe it was how relaxed we became. Too relaxed. There were fleeting moments, subtle but unsettling, where I felt something I couldn't name. A quiet tension, a pull I didn't understand. And I didn't know how to handle it. So I did what I always do. I buried it, shoving it beneath the pile of things I couldn't face. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overtired, that my mind was playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something was shifting. The showers became an odd refuge. At first, it was about convenience, saving time, dodging fights, making our tight quarters bearable. But it evolved into something else. It was the only time we weren't pulled apart by phones, work, or the world outside. Just us, the water's rush, and the steam softening the edges of reality. We began talking more in those moments than anywhere else. At first it was trivial, what we'd do that day, whether the landlord had fixed the dripping sink, what we needed from the store. But then the talks grew heavier. One morning, as the water poured over us, Daniel sighed heavily and muttered, "I don't know why I bother with job applications. No one's hiring me." I turned to him, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Of course they will." He gave a hollow laugh. "Then why do I keep getting turned down?" I had no answer. I wanted to say it would all work out, that he was bright and driven. But I knew rejection's sting. I knew what it felt like to pour your soul into something only to be told you fell short. Before I realized it, I was sharing things I hadn't told anyone in years, about the job I nearly landed, only to lose it at the last moment, about the nights I cried in my car, hiding my tears from him, about the burden of carrying everything alone for so long I forgot how to ask for help. Daniel listened. He didn't try to solve it or offer empty comfort, he just listened. And for the first time in ages, I didn't feel so alone. Looking back, that was when I stopped seeing him as just my son. Not in a way that was improper, at least, not at first. But he became the only person I could confide in, the only one who understood the grind, the feeling of sinking under pressures you can't meet. I started leaning on him in ways I hadn't before. If work went wrong, he was my outlet. If I had a rough day, he was my solace. And that might have been okay if I'd had anyone else, but I didn't. Over time, I'd let go of everything. Friends, relationships, even small talk with colleagues. I hadn't noticed until my friend Tessa called me out. "You've been ignoring my calls, Clara," she said, her tone firm but kind. I shifted, clutching the phone. "I've just been swamped." "No, you've been shutting people out," she said, seeing through me. "You need to step out of that apartment. You need a life beyond Daniel." I hated that I had no reply. Around then, Daniel started to pull back. It was subtle at first. Later nights out, quieter days, moments when he seemed far away. Then, one morning, he dropped a bombshell. "I applied for a job out of state," he said, his voice light like he was mentioning the weather. I froze. "What?" He avoided my eyes. I need a change, Mom. I can't stay here forever." I'd always known this day would come, but knowing doesn't prepare you. I forced a smile, tried to sound encouraging. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm proud of you." And I was. But I also felt something else, something I didn't want to admit. Fear. If Daniel left, what would I have? Who would I be without him? The thought shook me more than I could express. That fear began to shape my actions. I started checking on him more, texting, calling, asking where he was, who he was with. At first he didn't seem to care, answering as he always had, but then, one night he didn't come home until 2 a.m. The moment he walked in, I pounced. "Where were you?" He blinked, startled. "Out." "With who?" "Why does it matter?" His tone was sharp, guarded. "Because I worry, Daniel. You used to tell me things and now it's like you don't care." "I don't have to tell you everything, Mom." He shot back, rubbing his face. "Since when?" "Since I became an adult," he said, his voice rising. "Since I started wanting a life outside this place." His words cut deep. "And what about me?" My voice broke. "Am I just supposed to wait for you to leave?" "That's not my responsibility," he said, his voice icy. The silence that followed was crushing. I felt it in my core, the weight of those words. He hadn't meant to wound me, but he did. Because it wasn't just about this argument. It was about all the ways I'd let my world shrink to just him. And now, he was slipping away. The days after were strained. Daniel and I moved like strangers, cautious with our words, avoiding too much or too little. The apartment, already small, felt stifling. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge, the distant wail of sirens, felt louder, like the walls were pressing in. I told myself I was overreacting, that this was temporary, that things would return to normal. But I knew better. The fractures in our bond had been growing for years, and now they were undeniable. One evening, as I scrubbed dishes in the tiny sink, Daniel came in and leaned against the counter. He didn't speak at first, just watched me. I felt his gaze, but kept my eyes on the dishes, afraid of what I'd see in his face. "Mom," he said at last, his voice soft but steady. "We need to talk." I froze, hands still in the soapy water. My pulse quickened, but I kept my voice calm. "About what?" He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he'd back off, but then he took a breath and said, "I'm moving out." The words hit like a blow. I turned off the tap and dried my hands, stalling to absorb what he'd said. When I faced him, he was staring at the floor, arms crossed. "What do you mean, moving out?" I asked, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay composed. "I found a place," he said, eyes still down. "Not far, a few miles away. But I need my own space, Mom. I can't keep living like this." I wanted to protest, to say he was wrong, that he wasn't ready, that he didn't know how tough it was out there. But the words stuck in my throat. Because he was right. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a man, and he needed his own life. "When?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Next month," he said, finally looking at me. "I've already paid the deposit." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral, but inside I was unraveling. This was it, the moment I'd dreaded for years. My son was leaving and I couldn't stop him. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought of all the years raising Daniel, the sacrifices, the dreams I'd shelved, and now it was over. He didn't need me anymore, and I didn't know who I was without him. The next morning I called Tessa. I didn't know what I'd say, but when I heard her voice I broke. "I think I've messed up," I said, my voice cracking. There was a pause, then Tessa said, "Tell me, Clara." So I did. I spilled everything, the showers, the closeness, how Daniel had become my only confidant, my only support. I told her about our fight, his plan to move out, how I felt like I was losing myself. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Tessa sighed and said, "Clara, this sounds like emotional enmeshment." "What?" I asked, confused. "When a parent relies too much on their child emotionally," she explained. "When the lines blur and the parent leans on the child instead of the other way around." I shook my head, though she couldn't see. "That's not it." "Isn't it?" she asked gently. "When was the last time you spent time with anyone but Daniel?" I opened my mouth, but no answer came, because I couldn't remember. I'd stopped going out, stopped calling friends, stopped being anything but his mother. Tessa's voice softened. "I care about you, Clara, but you need to hear this. You can't make Daniel your whole world. That's not fair to him, or you." Her words struck hard, because she was right, and I'd been too blind to see it. Tessa's words lingered long after our call. I turned them over in my mind, trying to grasp what she meant. Emotional enmeshment. It sounded so detached, so clinical. Was that really what had happened? Had I leaned on Daniel so much that I'd lost myself? The more I reflected, the more I saw the truth. I'd let my world shrink to just Daniel. He'd become my everything, my friend, my anchor, my reason to keep going. And in doing so, I'd forgotten how to be me. The next day, I did something I hadn't in years. I booked a therapy appointment. Sitting in that small office facing a stranger was daunting, but once I started talking, I couldn't stop. I shared my loneliness, how I'd convinced myself I didn't need anyone else, how I'd let Daniel fill the void of relationships I'd never pursued, and then, for the first time, I voiced the fear I'd buried. "I don't know who I am without him." My therapist nodded, her expression warm but firm. "You're allowed to need people, Clara," she said. "But you can't make one person your entire world. That's not fair to them or you." Her words echoed Tessa's, hitting just as hard. I'd thought I was being strong, choosing solitude. But really, I'd been scared. Scared of rejection, of failure, of letting someone in only to lose them. So I'd clung to the one person who couldn't leave. Until now. The day Daniel moved out, I sat in the apartment for hours. I didn't cry, though I expected to. I thought I'd collapse under the weight, let the loneliness consume me. But I didn't. I just sat, staring at the empty spaces where his things had been, the half-open closet, the bare counter, the bathroom door slightly ajar, as if waiting for someone. The apartment felt too still, too hollow. For the first time in years, I was truly alone, and I didn't know what to do. The first weeks were brutal. I'd built my life around Daniel, and without him, I felt unmoored. I'd wake expecting to hear his steps, to see him rushing about, to feel another presence. But each morning it was just me. The loneliness crept in, heavy and oppressive. I'd reach for my phone to text him. "What's up? Did you eat?" Then stop myself. He needed space, and I needed to learn to exist without him. So, for the first time in years, I turned inward. Tessa was the first to pull me out of my shell. "We're going out," she said one night, showing up at my door like she knew I was retreating. "No excuses. Get ready." I wanted to refuse, to sink into my solitude, but I knew if I didn't push myself, I'd stay stuck. So I went. And for the first time in ages, I laughed. Real laughter, the kind that aches in your belly, the kind that reminds you you're alive. It wasn't smooth at first. Socializing felt alien, like relearning how to exist. But each step outside my comfort zone made it easier. I reconnected with old friends, met for coffee, had long talks, sat alone in restaurants without feeling incomplete. Then, one day, I went on a date. Nothing serious, just coffee with a man Tessa introduced me to. A simple, quiet evening. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty for enjoying someone's company. I wasn't betraying Daniel because I realized I was allowed to have a life too. The date wasn't life-changing. His name was Mark, and he was kind, easy to talk to, genuinely curious about me. We discussed work, books, the city we shared. It was uncomplicated, and for the first time, I felt like more than a mother. I was a woman with her own stories, her own passions. When I got home, I sat on my bed, staring at my reflection. My hair was damp from the rain, my cheeks rosy from the chill. But there was something else in my face, a spark, a glimpse of the woman I'd been before motherhood consumed me. It wasn't just the date. It was the realization that I could still connect, still laugh, still feel something beyond loneliness. A small step, but a step forward. Over the next weeks, I rebuilt my life. I joined a book club at the library, something I hadn't done since Daniel was young. I took walks in the park, not just to think, but to remember the world was vast beyond my apartment. I even signed up for a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try. It wasn't easy. Some days the loneliness was crushing, and missing Daniel hurt physically. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I'd ever feel whole. But slowly I pieced myself back together. Daniel and I still talked, but it was different, less intense, more balanced. He called weekly, usually Sundays, to catch up. Sometimes we talked for hours, laughing over memories or venting about life. Other times it was brief. "How's it going?" "Good. You?" "Good. Talk soon." It wasn't the constant closeness of before, but it was enough. I realized I didn't need to cling to every word, desperate to keep him near. I was learning to let him go, not losing him, but giving him room to grow. One Sunday, about 6 months after he moved out, Daniel suggested coffee. We met at a cafe near his new place. He was already there by the window, looking different, more assured, more himself, like he'd found his place. "Hey, Mom," he said, standing to hug me. "Hey," I said, hugging back. It was our first in-person meeting since he left, and it felt odd but good. There was a new distance, but it wasn't cold. It was healthy. We sat, and for the first time, our talk wasn't tangled in guilt or strain. We discussed his job, my pottery, the book I was reading. It was natural, and I felt we were equals, not just mother and son, but two adults sharing life. "I'm proud of you," I said as we finished. He looked surprised. "For what?" "For everything," I said, smiling. "For taking this leap, building your life. I know it wasn't easy." He nodded, stirring his coffee. Then, after a pause, he said, I'm proud of you too, Mom. The words startled me. For what? For being you. For not giving up. For finding yourself again. Something in me softened. He'd seen the change. The way I was learning to stand alone. And it mattered to him. That talk lingered for days. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. With warmth. Genuine pride. It showed me letting go wasn't just about giving him space, but proving I could be strong alone. That I could be more than his mother. Over the next months, I kept rebuilding. I made new friends, rekindled old ties, even dated again. It wasn't always smooth. Doubt crept in. Am I moving too fast? Too slow? But I was living for me, not someone else. One evening, as I got ready for a date with Mark, my phone pinged. A text from Daniel. Hey, Mom, just checking in. How's it going? I smiled, typing back. Good. Heading to dinner with Mark. You? Good. Just off work. Have fun. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of emotions. Part of me still felt guilty for moving on, but another part felt proud. Proud I was learning to live my life. The date went well. We ate at a small Italian place downtown, and I was fully present, not dwelling on Daniel, the past, or the future. Just enjoying the moment, the food, the talk, the way Mark's eyes crinkled when he smiled. At home, I sat on my bed looking in the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, and there was a lightness in me I hadn't felt in years. I was more than a mother. I was a woman with her own dreams, her own future. But I was also learning to shed the guilt of not being enough, not doing enough, not being perfect. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be me. One Sunday, Daniel came for dinner. It was his first time back since moving out, and it felt strange, but good. We cooked together, laughing as we fumbled through an online recipe. It was easy, and I felt we were equals, not just mother and son, but two adults navigating life. As we ate, Daniel said, "You seem different." I raised an eyebrow. How so? He shrugged. Happier, I guess. More you. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. I think I am. He nodded, poking at his food. Then after a pause, he said, I'm glad, can't, Mom. You deserve to be happy. The words caught me off guard. Thank you, I said softly. That means a lot. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing you don't need to fill every moment. Watching him help clean up, I realized love isn't about clinging. It's about trusting. Trusting the people you love will return, not out of duty, but desire. As months passed, Daniel and I found a new rhythm. Our talks were lighter, less heavy with expectation. He thrived in his job, and I found my footing in this new chapter. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One evening cleaning the closet, I found an old photo album, Daniel's first school day, his first soccer match, his graduation. Flipping through, a bittersweet pang hit me. Time had flown, and that little boy was now a man. I was so absorbed I barely heard the knock. Opening the door, there was Daniel, groceries in hand. Hey, he said, smiling. I was nearby and thought I'd drop by. Hey, I said, letting him in. What's with the groceries? He shrugged. Thought we could cook together, like old times. I smiled, warmth filling me. That sounds great. We cooked and talked, but with a new ease, a balance we hadn't had before. We weren't just mother and son. We were two people who'd learned to love without losing ourselves. As we ate, Daniel said, I've been thinking a lot lately. About what? I asked, taking a bite. About us, he said, thoughtful. How things were and how they are now. I just wanted to say thank you. I frowned. For what? For letting me go, he said, meeting my eyes. I know it was hard, but I needed it, and I think you did too. A lump formed in my throat, but I smiled. You're welcome, but you don't need to thank me. You're my son. I just want you to be happy. He nodded, smiling faintly. I am happy, Mom, and I think you are too. I looked at him, really looked, and knew he was right. I was happy, not because everything was perfect, but because I'd learned to embrace imperfection, to let go, to trust, to love without clutching. After dinner, we looked through the photo album, laughing at memories without sadness, just gratitude for the time, the moments, the love that carried us. At the door, I hugged him tightly. "I love you," I said, voice muffled. "I love you too, Mom," he said, pulling back. "And I'm proud of you." I smiled, warmth spreading. "I'm proud of you too." As he walked down the hall, I realized love isn't about holding tight. It's about trusting there's space for growth. I was about to close the door when he stopped and turned. "Hey, Mom," he called softly. I leaned against the frame. "Yeah?" He shifted, a shy smile forming. "Before I go, maybe we could do one last shower together, for old time's sake." I blinked, caught off guard. The request was so sudden, so unexpected. I didn't know what to say. My mind flashed to those mornings, the fights, the laughter, the quiet connection. It had been so long, yet the memory was sharp. "Are you serious?" I asked, eyebrow raised. He shrugged, grin widening. "Why not? It's not weird. It's just us, one last time." I hesitated, heart racing. Part of me wanted to say no, to leave the past behind, but another part, the part tied to those years, those memories, wanted to say yes. It felt like a way to close a chapter, to honor what we'd shared, good and bad. "Okay," I said, nodding. "One last time." We stepped back inside, and for a moment it was like nothing had changed. The bathroom was still cramped, the water slow to warm, the city's hum seeping through the window. But as we stood side by side, I felt the difference. The old tension was gone, replaced by quiet understanding. We didn't talk much at first, just stood under the spray, steam curling around us like a curtain. It was odd, but not uneasy. It felt like a ritual, a farewell to the past and a nod to what lay ahead. After a bit, Daniel spoke. "You know, I used to dread this," he said softly. "The arguing, the rush, the lack of space. But now, I kind of miss it." I looked at him, surprised. "You miss it?" He nodded, smiling faintly. "Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was ours, you know?" I did. Those mornings, messy as they were ours, part of our story. Standing here now, I realized I didn't regret any of it, not the fights, the closeness, or the moments that felt too raw. It was all part of us. "I miss it too," I admitted, voice low, "but I'm glad we're here now, glad we've sorted things out." He nodded, eyes meeting mine. "Me too, Mom. Me too." We stayed a few more minutes, water pouring, steam thick. Then silently we turned off the tap and stepped out. It was over, the moment, the chapter, but it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a start. The air felt lighter as we stepped out, as if the steam had lifted the last traces of strain. Daniel handed me a towel, his movements easy, intentional. There was a calm in how we moved now, a balance we'd earned. I wrapped the towel around me, glancing at him. He was drying his hair, his face calm, almost peaceful. We'd come so far, from rushed mornings and sharp words to this quiet clarity. We'd crossed lines, blurred boundaries, but now we'd found solid ground. "You know," I said, breaking the quiet, "I think this was a good idea. One last shower." He looked at me, eyes warm. "Yeah, me too. It felt right." I nodded, a lump in my throat. I wanted to say so much, ask so much, but the words felt too big. Instead, I touched his arm, a small gesture carrying all my love. "I'm proud of you, Daniel," I said, voice shaky. I don't say it enough, but I am. You've become such an incredible person, and I'm so lucky to be your mom. He looked at me, eyes glistening with something unspoken. "Thanks, Mom. That means a lot." We stood in silence, filled with memories and unspoken words. Then, without thinking, I pulled him into a hug. Not the quick hugs of his childhood, but one that said everything we couldn't. "I love you. I'm sorry. I'm here, always." He hugged back, arms tight, and for a moment it was just us. When we parted, tears were in my eyes, but I didn't hide them. I didn't need to. I love you, Mom, he said, voice thick. I love you too, Daniel, I said, smiling through tears. More than anything. We talked and laughed a bit more, like when he was young. It felt good, like rediscovering each other. When it was time to go, I walked him to the door, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. Take care, okay? I said as he stepped into the hall. You too, Mom, he said, smiling. Call if you need me. I will, I promised, watching him go. As I closed the door and leaned against it, I felt sadness, but also hope. For him, for me, for what lay ahead. We'd been through so much, and while our bond would never be the same, it was stronger in its way. Love isn't about clinging, it's about letting go. Trusting those you love will return because they choose to. The apartment felt different in the days that followed. The silence wasn't heavy, it was calm, almost soothing. I filled the space in new ways. I started painting again, my canvases messy, but mine. I met friends for coffee, walked in the park, talked about things beyond motherhood. Daniel and I talked often, our conversations lighter, freer. He was thriving, and I was proud, not just of his success, but of who he'd become. We'd both grown, and our bond was stronger for it. One evening, sipping tea on the couch, I thought of our last shower. It was bittersweet but necessary, a goodbye to the past, a hello to the future. And sitting there, in the quiet, I realized I was okay. More than okay. I was happy. For the first time in years, I was living for me. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was ready. I'd learned to let go, not just of Daniel, but of the guilt, fear, and expectations that had held me back.